Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Saint Radigunds by the band Spirogyra.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Despite the pretty short title for this album and for this band, it happened to be probably the most complicated one, which I've had problems with saying. Although I didn't have to do a lot of takes right now, trust me, I tried many times to say this name correctly and just got both of them wrong. So I'm gonna say this now. This album's name is Saint Radigunds and the band's name is Spirogyra, and if I make mistakes in saying them for the rest of the video, well, you know I'm having a hard time. Anyway, here's some of my favorite bits from this album.
There was some mighty queer folk about, but most were honest workers and knew their place. Magical Mary, she shivers her timbers and lays you on the ground. Strikes up a rhythm in 52 tempo and says, "Hey man, you found, hey man, you're."
On the beach we lit a fire, Frenchman gave us wine and whiskey. Out to see the British Navy.
We were happy, cool, me and you.
So let me open up this video by stating what is probably an obvious, but it might not be obvious for some of the people watching this one. So you might remember a while back, not too long ago, I reviewed the album First Utterance by the band Comus. Now, if you're somewhat a person that knows that other album and likes it, but doesn't know today's album, go ahead and check it out. Like, even before checking this review out, please stop this review, go ahead, listen to today's album because you'll surely love this one. The similarities are endless and I'm gonna elaborate about it more in the rest of the video. So the band Spirogyra, except for being a band whose name I struggle to say each and every time, is also a band originating from Bolton in the UK, and they formed back in 1967. Now, despite these guys forming back then, it took them a while until they released their debut album, and when they did so, it was already 1971, and they released their debut album, which is the one we're reviewing today, Saint Radigunds. Now, this band has to be one of the most striking cases of a band whose each and every single member is definitely irreplaceable, and whatever virtues they bring into the music is just fruitful and, as I said, basically irreplaceable. And that's not the case, and I don't say this lightly with many bands, because on most cases you usually have bands with one or two actual vital players and the rest being sort of dispensable or at least replaceable at best. But that's not the case when we talk about Spirogyra, and every single member that's to be found on this album is essential for this one's success, and I think it's only right that I mention all of the members of this band. So we have Barbara Gaskin on lead and backing vocals. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but one should never underappreciate the existence of a female vocalist, especially when it comes to progressive rock. We also have Martin Cockerham, who's on lead vocals and also guitar. Julian Cusack is in charge of the keyboards on here, but maybe most importantly, he is the one playing the violin. And Steve Borrell is playing the bass. Now, that might sound a bit underwhelming, he only plays the bass on here, but trust me, I'm gonna get to why he's so great and amazing when we get later into this review. Alongside this quartet, we also have a few few more players putting in their parts for this album, and one of them is presumably Bill Bruford on drums, but no one really knows if he's actually on this album because he is uncredited and overall just unconfirmed, but there is rumor that he actually plays on here, so that's something. But nevertheless, if that's true or not, there is yet another drummer to be playing on this album as well, though drums aren't really the main thing for this album despite appearing quite a handful of times. And together as this band, they set out to create a one-of-a-kind album, seeing as First Utterance by Comus wouldn't be released for another few weeks from that point. Now this album opens up with a track called The Future Won't Be Long, very inspiring for sure, and this song is what you might call acid folk, one of the most interesting subgenres of folk music ever in my personal opinion, and it's a really neat track, and this prevails all the way up until the third track called Magical Mary. Now this third track really features something astounding, and that's the brilliance of bassist Steve Boreal. He does something truly amazing on this one, and it has to be the first real good, if not even perfect track on this album. And how he plays the bass on here? Well, he just mimics the melody on here, whether it be the lead vocalist's melody or the violin doing its thing. He mimics everything as well as adding some flourishes on the way, and it's very tight, it's very upbeat, it's very fast, and it's very convoluted and complicated at the same time, but moreover it is just very fun and alive to listen to. I was definitely just, awed by listening to what Steve Boreal does on here, and it's definitely unbelievable. And the thing is, his bass is so omnipresent on here and so stubborn to be omnipresent as well, that it just acts as this sort of glue that takes this entire wacky song and puts it together. And I believe that this track without this specific bass line would never have been so great as it is right now. And then this album continues with what admittedly are some lesser interesting tracks, but it all gets kind of interesting when we reach two interesting tracks called Time Will Tell and We Were a Happy Crew. These ones also feature Boreal on his bass in the most stellar of ways, but in addition it also has Barbara Gaskin singing on here, as well as showing off her ability to duet finely with either Cockerheim or the violin. And while Gaskin's voice is definitely angelical, I can't resist the fact that I want to call it somewhat of the voice of a siren. Now I'm not meaning the siren, the alarm that's going off. I mean a sea siren, the one that lures pirates into the midst of the ocean. Something about it is very deep, it's very personal, emotional, captivating, luring, and underneath it all, it has some sense of danger to it, and I really like that. And I have to give out yet another honorable mention to one of the tracks for this album, and that's actually the last track to be found on here, called The Duke of Beaufort. Now, I don't know if that's the exact way you're supposed to say it, but I really don't care. This song is an interesting case because on its surface, it is just one of those, oh, we have like 10 more minutes on the record, we should do something on it, and they just wrote a track for that time period. But it just works, this one. It's really good, and I believe that it's the prime track to feature all of the band members doing their thing simultaneously. Everyone is shining, no one's in the background, it is just a harmony of sounds, and it sounds amazing. And all of the tracks that I noted are really good, and while there are other tracks on this album which kind of wowed me less, I still do believe that the experience from this entire album is just amazing. Now, I do feel like I have to make one comparison before I finish this review off, and that's comparing this album to one I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and that's First Utterance by Comus. These two ones, they're strikingly similar. There's so much about them that is so similar. That's why I had to tell you guys that if you don't know one, you should definitely go ahead and check the other because you're gonna like it. But there are slight differences between one another, and I could manage to kind of sum it up by saying that today's album is definitely one of folk prog that you'd hear in some sort of a festival or a carnival. But Comus, while sounding much the same, are more something you'd expect to find with a bunch of crazy loonies, chanting around a campfire at night in the English meadows. So there's similarities within them, but the energies are kind of different. But again, both of them are great. I do believe that Comus did a better job as a whole. I really like the oxymoron between their very cheery and bright and lustful vocals and instruments as opposed to the very dark subject matter that they go through in that album. But that's just a personal opinion, and honestly I do get why both of them are considered to be the greats of this subgenre alongside Jethro Tull, and of course Harmonium. So at first I really didn't think a lot about this cover. It didn't look special in any case for me, but then I looked kind of deeper into it and I started realizing that maybe there's more to look at this one and actually realize about it. As you can see, we basically have the band members, the 4 of them, they're leaning against this wall, but looking at this picture a bit more starts revealing, like the logo of this band, there is a bit of color to be seen on here and there is some vibrancy hidden here. So we have the band and they're all young and they're very at ease, but then if we look from left to right, we can see 2 transitions taking place. The first one is that the person on the left is wearing all white and the person on the right is wearing all black basically, and the transition is between them both getting darker or lighter, depends on which direction you look at. The second transition, and that one's mostly interesting, is the fact that that person in white is basically kind of just indifferent and he has an indifferent look on his face, but as we look and progress towards the right side we can see them start smiling, giggling, and at last laughing. And just to make everything more interesting and less benign, you also have a 5th person walking in front of them all and basically just getting out of the boundaries of the picture, much like we see in the cover for The 6 Wives of Henry VIII by Rick Wakeman. And I really don't know what to say about this one, but to me it looks like there's something real about this cover. There is something authentic about this one and it looks good. It both has a good aesthetic to it, but it also just looks very genuine and nice and cheery and upbeat, and it lets you know who the band are without really telling you anything other than the imagery. And whoever made this cover probably didn't direct the band to do exactly what they were doing. I just think that there was a lot of variety of photos to choose from and the decision was done masterfully, and for that we received this very interesting cover which portrays some very nuanced emotions, which I personally really like. So for now, this album isn't yet perfect. It's kind of close to there, but it hasn't quite yet grown on me, although I do believe that it will happen in the near future. But for now, it's gonna get a very, very high rating of 8 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're gonna be listening to Inagata da Vida by Iron Butterfly. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wanham, Rist of Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are definitely the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my About page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.